Okay, so we'll start with 3 ohms and a short invocation. So join me when you're ready. Om. Om. Sahana bhavatu sahano bhunaktu saviryam karavavahe tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vitvishavahe. Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmat Acharya Paryantam Vande Gurum Paramparam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm just letting people in, so I'm hoping we've got everyone here. Yeah, hopefully. Okay, perfect. Right, welcome to today's talk. It's really lovely for you to be here on a Sunday evening, so hopefully we'll get through what it is that we want to be talking about. So today we will be talking about yoga and happiness. So I will be sharing my screen with you, so I've got 2 screens, so I'll be looking in 2 different places. So it's not that I'm not with you, but I'll just be kind of flicking from one screen to another. So I'll just make sure that we're recording the right thing and the right screen. Okay. Can you all see my screen? Yeah, okay, perfect. Right, so today we're going to be talking about the place of spirituality in modern living. So the idea behind these talks is they will happen in the first Sunday of every month, and we will slowly be building to learn a little bit about philosophy. And today really is just about setting the scene. So we won't be levitating or anything like that just yet. So we will be just setting the scene about what we're going to be talking, and just to sort of see whether we kind of agree and this is what you have signed up for. And true to style, we'll start with the aims and objectives. So the aim of what we want to do today is to understand the role of spirituality in our life. So it's up to us to then make a decision as to whether we agree with this or not. So that's the motion. And then the objectives of what we want to do is we want to understand a little bit about the nature of happiness. I'm not guaranteeing actually getting happiness by the end of it, but just to understand the nature of happiness, understand the barriers to happiness, and also identify the sources of suffering. So I'll be talking about this word a little bit more. I mean, the word suffering kind of rings a few alarm bells, but we'll talk about it. And also acknowledge the disconnect between what we want to do and what we actually do. So that's what we're setting out to do today. So I'll start off just trying to explain a little bit about what we mean by spirituality. And I think it's important to kind of shed a little bit of light. And as you will see as we progress, a lot of times we'll annoyingly be explaining something by saying what it isn't first. So so that's one way of that this whole philosophy works. And so this picture some of you may recognize. So this is Adi Shankaracharya. I'll talk a little bit more about him later on. So I think the best way to understand the difference between spirituality and religion is that spirituality is logical, not mystical. So it's really 100% logic and founded in science. A lot of it is well above my head. It's like physics, quantum physics, and but we're going to be looking at it not from an academic angle, but from a practical angle for things that we can use in our life rather than kind of doing discourses on them. So also one thing about spirituality, it is extremely clear. So as you would know with any philosophy and logic, they go through a lot of rigor to actually get to a standpoint. So it's completely clear and there is no confusion. So I think you might all agree with me that in religion, there is a lot of confusion, there is a lot of disagreement about various things, there are lots of misunderstanding about things. And some of these misunderstandings can or cannot be clarified. Whereas in spirituality, there are misunderstandings, but they can be clarified. And misunderstandings is from the part of a person who's actually learning it, as opposed to the discipline itself. So the other really appealing feature of spirituality is that it encouraged one to make up our own mind. So, so basically it goes without saying that I'm not asking you to believe anything that I say, but to actually question what I'm saying, and you are more than free to disagree. And it is really for us to think. And it's not, you know, sometimes in religions, we kind of are told, well, you believe what we're telling you, things are so because they are. And whereas here, this is not what one is trying to say, is just trying to say, well, question whatever you need to question. And then I think this one, I was kind of hesitating a little bit about putting this, but I think for me, it is a very good way of actually reuniting all the religions that we have. I mean, at the essence, all the religions are very similar. I mean, in terms of the exterior forms of what we do, how we do things are very different. But at the very core of each religion, I mean, at least the ones that I know of, there is a way of reuniting all of this to actually make sense of what's going on. I mean, I think this is something that I've been struggling with quite a lot. And as a lot of you know, that I'm originally from Mauritius, and which is very multicultural. And so when you kind of grow up in that kind of environment, so I'm born a Hindu, but my best friend was a Muslim, and our other friends were Christians, and, you know, different religions all together. And it was just kind of saying, well, what are we saying? Is that your God is better than mine, or my God is true and yours is not? And how do you kind of put all these together to make sense of this plurality of religions together? And I think for me, this spirituality kind of tends to bring light to this, and kind of brings everything together. But at the very essence level, not at the main man-made level about how you should be entering a temple, how you should be doing things. This is very, very different. So, so I think these are really the main differences that I think exist between spirituality and religion. Then the next bit I wanted to talk about was spirituality and yoga. So then what does spirituality have to do with yoga? So yoga, well, as we all know, we all do asanas, and so this is one part of yoga, but then there is much more to yoga, and one of it is yoga philosophy. Okay, so and I think what we really want to understand here is that yoga philosophy starts from the subjective, and what I mean by subjective here is from us. So it goes from who we are, and it is the one thing that talks about us. So basically, if you found to be reading a book of Indian philosophy, and somebody says, what are you reading about? And you can confidently say, I'm reading about me, because that's what it's talking about. It is about who we really are, what our true nature is. So it starts from the subjective and then moves on to the material world. And I guess yeah, so that's very rare, and that's not done in a lot of the philosophies. And here I've taken a little bit of a parallel with science. So science is an objective knowledge and have very little to say about us as a person and who we truly are. I mean, it will know about this chair that I'm sitting on. It will know about the materials. It will know about bacteria. It will know about the cells that make us up. But actually, who is talking now? Science has very little to say about that. I mean, it will think it's my mouth, it's my body, or whatever. But in terms of the real subject, then science hasn't got very much to say about it. And science is very much about testing things, and if it's there, we will see it. If it's not there, that means we can't see it, and therefore it doesn't exist. And that doesn't quite really stand as an argument for many reasons that we will learn as we go along. So therefore there is that, well, what yoga philosophy does, it brings that connection between the spirituality and the subject and the material life, starting from the perspective of who we are. Okay, so and I think we tend not to think about ourselves, we tend not to talk about ourselves so much, whereas and this is also because our training in school is such that we start understanding about the material world, we develop our objective thinking. Everything we do at school is around the objective thinking and working on the intelligent quotient, on the IQ. But then there is the missing puzzle, which is the EQ, which is the emotional quotient, which kind of, if it's not well developed, then we may not be a balanced human being, or there is a part of our life that we would be missing on completely. And so I think that's just in a nutshell. I mean, obviously there is a lot more to it, and we will go through these again and again in more detail as we progress. But for now, I think this is just a little bit about what spirituality and what yoga has to offer. And so this says yoga right here, right now. This sounds like a Fatboy Slim title of a song. Is that right, Praveen? Right here, right now. Something that goes like that. I don't know if you remember, if any of you know. So I think we've got this idea about what is the ultimate aim of yoga and what it is. And a lot of time we talk about self-realization, and sometimes people use the word moksha in Sanskrit. It doesn't matter what term it's used, but there's this term of self-realization. And often what we think is that it is something that happens after death. It is, it's something that happens to us after death, then maybe we won't get birth again, or if that's what you believe, or it is something that happened, for later, but not in this life. In this life, this can't happen. But this is a little bit of a misconception. I mean, what yoga, or what self-realization here, realization of the self is actually saying, well, actually, this can happen in this lifetime, and this can happen as we are living. And and what it means is there is this aspect of being able to alleviate our sufferings and make us happy and content. So, and this is quite possible. So here I've got these pictures of yogis. So sometimes when we're thinking about who yogis are, we've got this image of it's somebody who's levitating, somebody who is in the mountains, and it's got to be somewhere in the Himalayas for this to happen. Or you've got to look of a certain way, not wear very much, and have all the fancy kind of hair. But actually, looking at us all here, it doesn't have to be like that. This is just a, I don't know, a romanticized idea of what it might be, if you like, of something which is a figment of our imagination. But really, spirituality is something that we can do now, and which we are doing some of it already, and which we just don't know that's what it is. And I think that's quite an important part as well, to kind of understand. And again, you know, sometimes, well, people kind of ask me the question, and when did you start doing yoga? And it's not, I don't really know how to answer this question, because it is which part of yoga, what do you actually mean? And then it was only about 5 years ago that I realized that some of the things that I've been doing all my life, and you know, it was actually yoga, but I didn't know it was called yoga. So you know, so it is, so it's not this thing that is very separate from what we are, but it's just, you know, but it just comes together as a systematic way to understand some of the things. So basically, from this, what I wanted to kind of show is that it is not a fancy thing that happens to others or elsewhere, but it is this thing that we are practicing, and that we can practice better, and that we can practice right where we are. Okay, so yeah, and also, you know, we don't have to be wearing all sorts of hippie clothes to be doing it, and we don't have to be, you know, of a particular whatever to be able to practice yoga philosophy and yoga, really. And so now I wanted to talk about this notion of happiness, which is what we're going to talk about today. So, I mean, I guess, I don't know if you will agree that happiness is probably our common goal in life. Is that what we want? Is anyone else wanting anything other than happiness? No? No? Okay. Right. Okay. So we can disagree. We can. I mean, for now, I'm going to kind of proceed on the assumption that everyone agrees that happiness is our common goal, and that's what we all. That's what everything we do wants to lead us to happiness. But then again, you know, what happiness means to each one of us is going to be very different. Okay. So for a new mother, with young children, a lion would be their idea of bliss and their idea of total happiness, and just a little bit, you know, be able to get a bit of sleep for one night will be great. And also, you know, when we are growing up, we're told, oh, well, do well in school, get a job, make as much money as possible so that you can do whatever you can do, right? So for some of us, it might be buy as many kittens as you want. They're the source of happiness in your life. For some people, it would be a wonderful partner, and it would be loads of children. For some of us, it would not be any of these. So just various things that you know, there is this notion of what people think happiness is, or what it actually is. I mean, what we're experiencing, you know, when you're able to do something that you really want to do, it is happiness that you're experiencing. There's no doubt about it. And so it's just some examples to kind of get us thinking a little bit. So this is a luxury yacht here, and so that could be somebody's true idea of happiness. I mean, if I had one of these, I'd be able to travel, and that would be great. And I mean, the reason I took this example is just, well, when I was working out in Fiji for a little while, I met this guy who was working on a yacht. And so we were just talking, and it was at a party, and we were just talking, and he was saying that he was really stressed out, and it turned out that because there was bad weather coming, and the people who owned the yacht, so he was only working on the yacht, he didn't own it, but the owners were kind of very anxious about the yacht, and they were just so stressed out, and you know, because this is what they've all worked for, and you know, a bit of bad weather, when is this going to happen? So they were calling him about like every half an hour to say, you know, what about this, what do we do? And you know, and he was like, he was obviously, you know, reflecting the stress and the unhappiness of these people with what one might think is the perfect lifestyle, but they were just so scared. And then I was very curious, so I kind of asked, well, you know, but tell me about these people. Who are these people? Who are the kind of people who own these things? And tell me about them. And then he was saying, well, the woman, well, it's a couple, so and they're both retired, so she reads about 1 or 2 novels each day, and then in the evening they have a bit of wine, they have a bottle of wine each, and then they go to sleep, and they don't talk to each other very much, and that's what they do all day. And then sometimes they manage a little bit of a swim, and you know, so this is what they do. And he was kind of saying, well, actually, this is not at all a happy life. I mean, you know, it is a life, and it's, you know, but it's different. I mean, you know, it's just what we think a happy life is might not really be, or whether it is for them or not, I don't know. But it's just it just kind of starts making us think about what we think makes us happy, whether it does or not. And then, so this picture here is a beach in Mauritius, actually. So, you know, just the idea of being able to go there, holidays, and then we all know that what happens, you know, we love going on holidays, but then we also know that after a week or so, we've got to come back, or 2 weeks if you're lucky, or 3 weeks if you're really lucky. And but then we all know what's happened now with regard to holidays. So if we count on these things to make us happy, then we've got to think about it a little bit more. And then ice cream is an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, so when I was doing this, I just kind of asked my husband, what makes you happy? And he kind of said ice cream. So then I thought, okay, so probably got to talk about ice cream. And so the issue with ice cream is that, you know, if it's a hot summer day, 1 ice cream is great, and then sometimes if you're a bit greedy, then 2 is fine. You can end up having 2, and then, you know, you can steal a bit of your partner's or whoever else, so you can have 2.5, and then after you've had about 3 or 4, you're going to be very sick, aren't you? Probably. So and probably not ever have any ice cream in your entire life. So yeah, I mean, there is a limit to how happy ice cream can make you, right? So and then again, I mean, similar to ice cream, a nice drink or 2 with a friend, catching up, one after a few glasses, it's fine, and then after a bit, then it becomes a bit of a problem, and the next day, that's a different story altogether. So I think the point that I'm trying to get here is that I'm not kind of saying these are not things that make us happy, but it's to recognize some of the limitations of what we think make us happy, or to really understand what it is that make us happy. Okay, so really, what makes us happy is to be one with something. So I think if we say, right, when let's take an example. So if you're reading a book that's making you very happy, so you're kind of really immersed in that book, you're kind of living what is in this book, and you are really identified with whatever is going on in this book, so you're one with what's going on. And also, like, you know, sometimes we go out for a walk in nature and then we kind of say, oh, this was great, it helped me to clear my mind, and I was just so happy. I wasn't thinking about all the things that I should be doing that I'm not doing, all the things that you know, that's happening in my life at the moment. So you're really able to concentrate and to be one with what you are able to see, what you're doing at the time. So this undivided attention, this focused attention, is really what gives us the source of happiness. And sometimes, you know, some people who meditate, they also say, well, actually, oh, I love meditation, it makes me so happy. And that's because you've got one pointed attention with what you're doing, and you are in contact with your own self, and for that little bit. But the problem with not problem, but the limitation, if you like, with this is that after the 30 minutes you've done your meditation, then you've got to go back to everything else. So really, I mean, to understand what happiness is when you totally identify with something and nothing else matters. I don't know if you agree with this or not, but we can discuss in the later on. So again, with the images that we've all seen, the common thing in all these images is that they are all external objects. So they're all dependent on external factors. Okay, so you like the yacht when the weather is fine, when everything is going fine. You like the beach in Mauritius when the weather is fine, when you can actually travel there. And all this depends on factors other than us. So, you know, and and also one thing that we can see is that they all bring happiness, or limited happiness, that is time bound. Okay, so as I said, this holiday, you're bound to come back. This wonderful drink with a friend, it will end soon. Every good thing will come to an end, as we all know, right? So that is, every good thing as we know it will come to an end, and it's time bound. So that's true for all what I've said. Okay, so these cute kittens, the cat will die, and that will be, you know, that's a fact. Okay, so and also there is a slightly different point that I'm going to try and make. So if one object doesn't bring happiness at all times, then the happiness is not really in the object. The happiness is to do with you. I mean, if an ice cream doesn't make me happy all the time, always, then the happiness, but it depends on circumstances, whether it's a summer day, whether how many I've had before, it's conditional on so many other things. So therefore, if it's conditional on so many other things, then we can't really argue that it is that thing that is giving us happiness. So happiness is kind of almost something that we create ourselves. Okay, so I think the point that I want to make here is that these are temporary sources of happiness. I'm not saying we shouldn't have them. We should enjoy them when we have them. But then the idea is of what the other side of the coin is, then we should be able to live without them as well. Okay, so then that becomes a bit more difficult, isn't it? I mean, why we've been struggling through lockdown, we've not been able to go where we wanted to go, why we've not been able to see whoever we want to see. And it's this absence is because these people, whatever we think are the sources of happiness, we've identified for ourselves. And then when they are not there, they make us unhappy. That's the problem, isn't it? As long as they are there, it's fantastic. Nobody complains. Everyone is happy. But when it's not there, then that's when the problem comes. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this idea of suffering and insecurities. So suffering is something that, if you like, is a term that's used in philosophy to describe whatever is not happy, right? So even if you read a little bit about the story of the Buddha, so it was when Gautama came out of the palace and he saw suffering happening, and that was kind of where, you know, his thinking started, and he kind of started questioning, well, there must be more to life than this suffering. So so I think the word suffering is kind of a little bit more loosely used to say the lack of happiness, if you like. So suffering is not necessarily just physical suffering, mental suffering, it's just all kinds of things. And I remember when I was doing my teacher's training course, we were talking a lot about sufferings, and you know, and then there was one of my course mates who was kind of saying, well, what is this about? I mean, I'm perfectly happy. I've got the perfect partner. I live in this most idyllic place. I've got the perfect body. I do whatever I want, whenever I want. I've got a perfect family, and I've got a great job. And, you know, what is this suffering? I mean, none of this talks to me. And which is great. So what my teacher would say, so my teacher normally says, when somebody says that, says, well, enjoy. In that case, go away, you know, just don't work, go and enjoy. And then when the suffering comes, then come back. For now, if you want to enjoy your life, go and enjoy. But then that happen, you know, suffering will come. I mean, I said earlier on that, you know, the kitten will die, but we will all die eventually. We will all go through old age. If we're lucky enough, nothing will happen to us. But if we're not, something will happen. You know, so there are some things that, you know, we feel uncomfortable discussing, but it's a fact of life. And some of us are living some of it with others, people around us. Some of, you know, it is a fact of life. So really, if suffering is not part of your life now, please enjoy. Don't question it. It will end. But and so the thing to also think about is where does this suffering comes from? So from a philosophical point of view, where this suffering comes from is a misconceptions about the truth and the reality. So and I mean, I'm not going to talk about that today. I mean, that's the whole essence of what the philosophy is, but just to kind of say what is real, what is not real, what is permanent, what is not permanent, if you like. And also, and the second one is the problem of the non-self-recognition. So to kind of, what we mean by that is identification with this body. So we think we are this body. And that is also one of the main problems that we have. So we think, you know, with this body, then we start thinking, oh yeah, but I don't really like my nose, and I don't really like how this looks like, and you know, this, we think we are this body. So I'm not going to talk more about it to say whether we are or we are not. I mean, that's something we'll discuss at length about, and you will be able to reflect on it a bit more. And then the other thing that is a source of happiness and or not is, I've just talked about likes, and the problem with likes or the source, you know, the things that we say, oh, we like this, we don't like, you know, we like this, or we like this one more. And by definition, by having likes, you can say that the absence of having something you like is a problem. So this is just by definition. So that is a problem with things that we like, okay? And similarly, I mean, with dislikes, that's fairly simple. With dislikes, things that we don't like, then that's fairly clear that it's going to give us suffering. I mean, we don't like to going to the dentist. It makes us suffer, and that's fine. That's clear. That's a source of suffering. And then again, a little bit, if you like, related to the problem number 2 is the fear of death. I mean, we kind of all afraid about this. You know, when coronavirus came, we were all very worried about, oh God, are we going to disappear as a human race? Is this going to wipe us all out? And, you know, what's happening? It's something that it's a fear that's very real. And also, you know, I'm not saying it's justified or unjustified. I'm not making any judgment on this. I'm just saying that's one thing that, you know, we hold our life dear to us. You know, we fight for it, and that's who we are by being human beings. That's what we do. I'm not saying we should or shouldn't do that. I'm just saying this is something that makes us, you know, quite unhappy as well. The fear that, you know, one day we will die. So so really, I just wanted to kind of highlight these sources of suffering, if you like, and why they occur. And with the right understanding, these things will disappear. I mean, obviously, we will talk about how you get there and what you should do to get there, and what are the tools to help us get there. But at least now we have identified the sources of these problems. So some of you might have heard the term pancha or 5 kleshas. So these are called the kleshas. So they are, I mean, in Sanskrit, for those who understand, this is the first one is avidya, the second one is asmita, so the contrary of smita, and then the third one is raga, and then dvesha, and then abhinivesha. So these are the 5 kleshas, if anyone kind of, you don't need to know these words, you just need to know what they mean. I'm just saying that for anyone who is familiar with those terms. So all these give rise to insecurities for us, and cause fear and cause sufferings. And also sometimes these are also referred to as samsaras, and things that, basically the insecurities. So so that's a little bit, if you like, the sources of where suffering occurs, and therefore lack of happiness emerge from, if you like. And then, so I'm not going to dwell too much on this now, but I just wanted to kind of say that in the ancient texts, so there are various ages, or if you like, cycles, and I'm not going to talk in detail about this, but there is the age of truth, the 3-stage age. So that is where there is 1/3 of bad things, and then 2/3 of good things, and the age of mercy, where there is a little bit. There is about half of bad things and half of good things, if you like, of virtuousness and darkness, if you like. And then the fourth one is the age of confusion. So any guess of where we are now? Yeah. So we are in the age of confusion, and there is no doubt about it, right? So the name that is often used, the technical term in Sanskrit, is the Kali Yuga, and that's what it means. So that means an age of total darkness and ignorance, where we have actually completely lost touch of who we really are, and who we are, what we are here for, and also in terms of virtuousness, if you like. So again, there is a little bit of this disconnect between what our true nature is. Our true nature is happiness, and then what we want to do, and the things that we try to do, which is seeking happiness in external objects, which is bound to disappoint us, essentially. So and once we are no longer in contact with ourselves, with who we are, then inevitably this will lead to disharmony between friends and families, politicians, decision makers and citizens, between us and our surroundings, and between us and nature. So this whole disharmony comes from this confusion, if you like, that is characteristic of this age. So here I'm using this term about yoga to cleanse the mind. So we often use the term cleansing to talk about the body. So we're very good at that. So we've become experts at hygiene. Now, even more so, hygiene has gone to another level about, with in the current situation. And and so we really have got this, and also we need to realize that this whole hygiene thing is big business as well, right? So when I went to buy some magnesium salts for a bath, and I just couldn't believe how expensive they are, you know. And then when we're talking about hygiene, nourishing our body, superfoods and all that is like trillions of dollars of business. Okay, so we want to cleanse our body, we want to make sure that we eat right and all that. Okay, so all this is we're very good at this, but what we are not very good at doing is about cleansing our minds and about taking care of our minds. So we expose ourselves to a lot of things, and we just need to look at the staggering figures that about the amount of antidepressants that are prescribed. They are useful, but it's just the amount of it now kind of really suggests that there is a problem. And also the age at which these start getting prescribed are getting lower and lower as we go on. Okay, so here I've just tried to list those enemies of the mind, and enemies of the mind in the form of these. So some of you might recognize those. So it's lust and desire, so going through for things that we want or think we want, and just lust, being tempted by other things. And anger, so anger is something that we experience, and it's not here, it's not something permanently here, but it's a visitor, it comes and it goes, but it's something that we do, that we experience, and then we take decisions in those states as well, which then, you know, has consequences. And then there is ambition and greed. So ambition and greed, and so I think it was Mahatma Gandhi who said that, you know, the world has sufficient resources for everyone, but doesn't have sufficient resource for one or two angry nations or men. Okay, so if people are not angry, sorry, greedy nations or men, so we haven't got the resources to fuel greed. Okay. And then there is this idea of pride, which is something that we know about. So I was trying not to get too political here, but, you know, politicians that know everything, that are always right, and so I'm not going to try and imitate anyone. And then also there is this idea of delusion, where people are completely deluded, and you know, some of the things that are actually happening, and you're even thinking, is that real? Is that really true? So it's really hard to refrain from actually giving examples, so I will refrain, and I will keep it clean. But you know, we just have to think a little bit around us, and we all know what we're talking about. I'm seeing a few smiles, so I'm imagining people know exactly what I mean. Okay, so and also there is this idea of jealousy as well, and jealousy comes from this idea of competition. And competition is something that is ingrained in us from a very early age in school, when we're growing up, and everything there is, oh, you've got to be better than this, you've got to be able to do, you know, and so there is this idea. And then if jealousy is bound to develop from this idea of competition. So it is really understanding all these obstacles or enemies of the mind that actually are serious obstacles to happiness. Okay, so it's it's also I mean, the reasons I've kind of explained them here is so that we can identify them, we can recognize them. I mean, we all have them in different quantities at different times, and it is also being honest with ourselves when these actually happen within us. And so these come from all insecurities that we've talked about, and the sources of suffering that we've talked about. And so what they do, these enemies of the mind, is they divert us from the harmony and the unity that can actually help us to achieve our goal. So then what yoga does is it provides us with a set of tools that help us to create the harmony by cleansing the mind. so it gives us the tools to kind of address these issues and how we can train our mind, or some people use the term reprogram our mind and recalibrate our mind to help us think in a slightly different sort of way. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about was to be able to cleanse the mind, we need to really understand some of the problems that we talked about earlier, the sources of these problems. So we need to know, who am I? You know, what am I not? Why I'm here? What am I doing here? And also understanding our purpose in life in some ways. I mean, we don't have to have these ambitions or these wants, but knowing some of these would help us with the 5 klesha, for the 5 sources of suffering that I've mentioned about. So, I mean, talking about existential questions sometimes make us very uncomfortable, and you're like, oh God, are you going to talk about these things? Are you know, what's wrong with you? But, you know, it's, some people have it, some people are that way and they question things, and for some people it's not something that interests them, and it's absolutely fine. There is no right or wrong, and there is respect for everything. But I think, you know, I think for me, just the fact that you're here kind of suggests that maybe you're curious at least about what these things might be. So you might not be convinced, but you know, you're curious enough to sort of say, well, let's give her a chance. And okay. And I think, okay, this doesn't fit with the rest of the talk, but I just thought I'll throw this in briefly. And I think just to think about what the coronavirus has taught us so far, has actually taught us that, you know, we, a human race, as the superior race. And I think we've very quickly realized that we're not. Okay, so that we're very at the mercy of nature. You know, there is very little that we can do, and we have very little control, or sometimes no control over anything at all. And, you know, we'd like to think about the fact that, oh yes, I can do this, we can do this, I can, you know, I can plan this, I can do, but this is kind of has taught us that, well, no, you can't control, and there's so much that's going on in the external world that you will have to actually revisit what you're thinking about, what makes you happy, what you want, and etc. And also it's kind of made us question a little bit about, you know, can we count on all these sources of happiness? So during the time when we had the lockdown, all these things, all these nice things in those pictures, a lot of them we couldn't do. Maybe the line you could do, but a lot of them we couldn't do. And then what happens to us when all these external objects become out of bounds? Then what do? So we've got to be able to be content somehow. We're able to go and find our happiness somewhere. And that's what I think, well, for me at least, this is what it's kind of made me think about, that this is something that we should be able to do. Okay, so I think this is a little bit about what I wanted to talk about today. And the take-home messages really are that yoga is a way of life, can bring happiness to our lives right here, right now, without having to disappear to anywhere else. And I mean, I'm conscious that I haven't said how yet, but at least we need to kind of start from the beginning. Okay, so and it's not going to be a quick fix answer. You know, it's not just going to be a potion that you drink. It's going to be, you know, things that will take time and patience. And also the other thing that I wanted you to realize is that yoga practice of the mat is extremely important if we want happiness in our lives. Okay, so knowing who I am, being able to be in control of my own happiness doesn't depend on whether you can do the headstand or the scorpion, or whether you can do any poses, right? And so asanas are great, but they don't help us in any way here. And Also to just think about, you know, the desire for knowing about the self, understand who we really are. And if it's a desire that you have, I'd encourage you to sustain it. And if it's not, then that's fine as well. And, you know, it's absolutely, there's no right way or wrong way to be. So I just wanted to kind of briefly talk about the invocations that I did at the start. So some of you weren't here, but I started with 2 prayers. So for those of you who come to my Monday classes, you would know this is what I normally do at the beginning. So it is an invocation to sort of say that, you know, it's talking about the relationship between the teacher and the student, be always protected. May we be nourished together. May we work together with great energy. And may our study of what it is be enlightening and not give rise to hostility. So this is the invocation that I did first today. And then the second one that I did today was one around the what we call the lineage here. So one thing to be aware of is that all what I'm going to be teaching in these monthly talks comes from ancient Indian texts. So, and these were passed verbally from one generation to another for generations and generations until actually they could be written. And also these are such that you really need teacher to be able to understand. So dummy guides to any of these do not work. So there need to be a teacher or to actually pass on this knowledge to us. So this is very, very special about this, and we are only here today because we have, you know, because there are others who have been there, who have understood it, and who have been teaching us, who have passed on, who have dedicated their time, their patience to pass it on, unbroken from these times for thousands of years, from one generation to today, for us to be here today. So basically it is kind of giving them thanks to having been there for us to make sure that we get this knowledge today. So that was why I did this prayer as well, is to recognize the role of the teacher and all our teachers that came before us in this lineage. Okay, so I will just end with another invocation, and just to say that, you know, the next class is on the 4th of October if you're still interested. And so the practice between now and then is start noticing what makes you happy, noticing what makes you sad, reflect on the cause of these sadness and whether you can trace it to the sources that we've discussed. Just, you know, you don't have to be scientific about it, but just observing and seeing what you like. Or if you want to forget about all that, turn up on the 4th, that's fine too. So we will just finish with a short prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you very much